COVID has been seen in the recent times, and how it is going to have an impact on the larger geopolitics of the East Asia. The first one is, I think, the failure of the US leadership has been like a major point, which will be considered as like seen as a major, like as Ambassador Upadhyaya spoke about that, like US global leadership actually flows not only from the military and its enormous economic power, but at the same time, the way it handles its US domestic governance first, and its ability to like offer a global public good, and third, the ability to coordinate global response to the crisis. So I think in this three aspect, actually, the US actually failed to bring in to establish itself as a global leader. When China, in fact, actually really understood that there is an assistant in the US in terms of how to handle this particular situation. So when you're talking about the Chinese role, like China has been trying to successfully contain this COVID-19 domestically, and it also showed how it responded very promptly to the situation. And secondly, China responded very fast in terms of material support to the other countries in the region. For example, particularly in Africa, like it has given all the 54 countries, even the African countries in combined, the coronavirus is very less in terms of like around like 100,000 cases, but still all the 54 countries have been given like ventilators, masks, and other necessary equipments need to combat this COVID-19. And at the same time, China is also responding in terms of coordinating the global leaders in how to fight this. So I think this is where actually this is actually bringing a lot of insight into thinking why we have to revisit the Indo-Pacific. As my fellow panel actually they spoke about like what is the pros and cons of like Indo-Pacific, how it is going to emerge the post COVID-19. At the same time, the other factor which is actually having an influence on this concept of Indo-Pacific is the Chinese assertive role in the Indo-Pacific region. And we saw recently the deteriorating relationship between China and Hong Kong and the new security law which is brought by the Chinese. So I think this is actually is being seen as a major disturbance in terms of how it is going to reshape Chinese political and the diplomatic relationship with other East Asian countries as well as with the Southeast Asian countries. At the meantime, like if you see like account of from January this year, the escalating maritime tension in this region, not only with the US, Japan, Taiwan, Vietnam, and Malaysia, as well as with India in the Indian Ocean. US, like the Chinese maritime for PLA Navy has been constantly been proactively engaging with the territorial waters of the Japan, Taiwan, Vietnam, and Malaysia. For example, in Malaysia, recently they have been conducting a drill on the territorial water. Chinese oceanographic ship has been like tagging that drilling. So the US has to respond with deploying the two ships in the region. So this has been created a major backlash in the US as well, because like US has to finally withdraw from that particular spot, but the Chinese ship is still there conducting the oceanographic survey there with accompanied by the other Chinese Coast Guard ships. So this has been a major point. At the same time, since January 2020, when Taiwan election has come, like President Tsai Ing, the US actually conducted almost like 6 to 7 patrolling in the straits of Taiwan. And China is also quite worried about the new president in the power, which is actually not very conducive to the idea of one country, two system. She's been very propagating the idea of independent Taiwan. And she's also having a very close relationship with the US. And significantly, the important point in the Taiwan relationship is that Taiwan defense budget over the years has been increased drastically. If you see like in 2020, the defense budget has been raised to $11 billion. It has been considered as a very significant amount compared with previous years. So these are the two factors, like in the terms of the US leadership to show the compassion and the leading role in the region. At the same time, the Chinese assertive role in the Indo-Pacific has actually prompted Japan and South Korea to think in terms of how it is going to shape its relationship with the China, US, and other regional countries. So these two impacts, this actually raises a major concern for Japan and South Korea as well. So Japan and South Korea are quite dependent on both US and China. They worried that the US-China conflict and the competition is a concern for them, because the whole global supply chain will be into the trouble, and where the Japan actually announced a special package for the countries to diversify the investment of China into other countries. And we have to wait and see how it is going to pan out, whether the Japanese companies in the China are going to take this initiative to move out from the China to other Southeast Asian countries and Japan as well. At the same time, South Korea is having a very close economic relationship with China. It has to be seen like in what way it has to go into uh, uh, bring the larger geopolitics into this context, because Japan, Korean has planned to move towards a southern plan where they want to expand the economic cooperation with other Southeast Asian countries as well. And we should also understand actually there's a trade war between the Japan and South Korea also completely deteriorated the relation between the two countries in 2019. So the December 2019 talk, which is the trilateral talk between the Japan, China, and South Korea, actually created a kind of initiative where the two countries will come in agreement, where they will move forward in the relationship to establish, again, to re-establish the trade and the economic cooperation. This COVID-19 actually brought this initiative standstill, and we have to wait and see how it is going to pan out after this post-COVID-19. And second aspect is US, Japan, and South Korea. This trilateral alliance has not taken much of initiative in this direction. So this is actually the point need to be understood from the larger geopolitical context, where China is trying to engage with the Japan and South Korea in more very proactive way, where the US leadership is trying to make a very slow approach in this area. And this China and the US competition is also increased the risk of Japan-US alliance, at the same time South Korea-US alliance. Uh, Japan-US alliance in terms of the burden sharing has been a major issue between the two countries, where the Trump actually said like Japan has to spend some around like $8 billion in order to maintain the US troop in the Japan. This has been a major issue, has been for so many years, but still as the US leadership been very demanding in this aspect, which is actually putting Japan in more a difficult situation. As we already know, Japan has been facing a lot of economic crisis as well. At the same time, the Olympic has not gone well, so that it is going to increase the pressure on Japan, how it is going to manage the relationship with the US. And the South Korea-US alliance, again, there is a burden sharing issue where the US administration has been like forcing South Korea to spend more on money in terms of US forces, like around like 200,000 US forces are stationed presently in South Korea. So in the context of North Korea as still being one of the major active nuclear player in the region, the confusion which is induced in the Japan, South Korea, and the US, actually it's completely misplacing the priority of the very role of the alliance which they especially they have built in. So second, the third point which I want to emphasize on this, when like the most of the Japan countries in the East Asia, like Japan, South Korea, and China, and the US, they focus more on the bringing the economic and the trade relation to the has been the major focus for them. But the regional security issues, like the uncertainty and the regional security issues, has been going to underpin this the whole effort Japan and South Korea is planning to bring out after the COVID-19. So this is going to emerge as a major concern for Japan and South Korea. How would they going to manage the relationship with the China on the first hand, and how would they going to manage the relationship with the US? And the US, we have to see from this year election in the US how it is going to turn out. So based on this, the Japan and South Korea have to move further how it is going to manage the regional security in this region, and how to establish the trade and economic cooperation between these countries, which has been the fundamental like for the East Asian region. So I'll stop here, and I'm ready to answer like any questions, like how it is helpful in revisiting the Indo-Pacific.